Hello, I'm Katrina and welcome back to my allotment. It's the 24th of May today. It's a bank holiday Monday, so I've not been at work and I've just been on the allotment and enjoying the warm weather. It's still really hot and dry at the moment, and it has been for the last 2 months now, and that's quite unseasonable for this time of the year. It feels like summer is already here and we haven't had much of rain in the last 2 months, which feels a little bit like a similar pattern to 2018 when we had that really long hot spell. So we'll just see where this one goes. But the poor plants have been through quite a lot, because not only have we had such a hot, dry spring, but we had like 2 or 3 frosty nights in the middle of the month, and the last frost date for Nottingham is usually the last week of April. So to have a night when it went down to minus 0.6 in the Polytunnel caught us all a little bit off guard. But fortunately I did think ahead, and I moved my tomatoes, my squash and my courgettes back home, all those tender crops, into the warm, so they weren't too affected. But a few things did get a little bit of frost damage, you'll see later on, but fingers crossed it's nothing to be worried about. So there's been a lot of juggling of plants, moving them back and forth. Then we had some really windy, gusty days over the last couple of days, so the leaves off the trees have all been stripped and it looks a bit like autumn around here. But it's been a busy month. I've got lots done. I've planted up the 2 new raised beds that I built. All of the supporting structures for my peas and beans and sweet peas are all built, so that's making it look really different. And I've planted out loads of crops as well, so there's quite a lot to see today. So we probably, have a look. Don't know if you can see, but my lupins are in bloom and they look so gorgeous. I can't wait to show you around the wildlife corner as well. So yeah, we best get started, so I'll show you around the plot. Let's go through the gate and see what's happening. And immediately I can see that my generous gardener rose has got its first blooms on. So this was planted about last April as a bare root rose, and it's just coming into bloom now. I think I've got about 10 or 12 buds on here, and look at that open one. Almost looks like a peony, the amount of petals in there. It smells so sweet. I wish you could smell this, guys. So pretty. Looking down at the allotment, and that big ugly piece of fencing is still there. I haven't been able to cover it up yet with wood, which I'm planning to do when I can get back into the shops after lockdown has fully ended and the shops aren't going to be too busy. But my hedge at this side is getting really quite dense now, and the roses are coming out. You okay there, little guy? Yeah. If I actually just spin around, you'll see the state of my entrance. See all those nettles there? It's quite wild and free at the moment. I've not been concentrating on this area, so it is a little bit weedy, and you know, I don't really mind it too much. It's not a priority right now. I can hoik them out when I get to it, and there are a lot of wildlife that like the nettles, and also I can make a feed as well. Organic fertilizer. But the bird feeding station has gone down such a success this year. I've seen so many new birds that I wouldn't normally see on my allotment. I've seen lots of finches, bullfinches, goldfinches, even a woodpecker. It's been amazing to see. I don't know if that's partly because of lockdown, you know, less traffic, fewer people and dogs off leads, I don't know. But yeah, so this border is looking pretty busy. Oh, I didn't show you the pond. Let's have a quick look. My hosta is looking huge. I really should perhaps divide that. It's not got a bite mark out of it, no slug damage at all. I've got my hookah there, that purple. It's all looking quite overgrown around here now. It's amazing the amount of growth that comes on in May. I've got my ferns are out now, and the crocosmia there. That'll soon have some flowers on it. But yes, as for the actual pond itself, I've seen some frogs. They're back now after mating season. They come back to my pond after. and I can't see any in there right now, but they definitely are visiting. And my lily, well, pond lily is a bit too small. Sorry, my water lily is too big for my tiny pond, and I know you can get micro versions, but my water lily is actually a cutting from my grandmother's, so it's quite sentimental. So I keep it in there, even though it's obviously not the right size. But yeah, it's quite shaded around here now, which is good, because wildlife ponds are great when they're part shaded. That helps prevent the algae. Underneath the bird feeding station, I've got an empty bed. I think this is where my leeks are going to go soon. Need to plant them out. Nice foxglove there coming up. But unfortunately, my honesty has flopped over in all that wind we had. Oh no, look at all those seed heads. So I'm going to stake that back up again, because I don't really want to cut that back. There's lots of winter interest there, and it's hopefully going to self-seed around the back here. And then, you know, I've got extra flowers. That's where I've been weeding there, next to the gooseberry. Let's have a look at the berries. They're still here, birds haven't got to them yet. Should probably cover it if I want to eat these, because the birds will find them, especially next to my hedge. But they're still quite small, still got some fattening up to do. But a fruit that is almost ready is my strawberries, and we've got lots of flowers on this year. And if I open up, can you see that? Oh my god, I didn't even know I had one ripe. Is it ripe enough? Oh my god, it's not even June yet. Okay, I'm gonna grab it. Oh my god, there's a red ant. Get off. Oh, it's not quite ripe, look. Still needs just a couple more days in this lovely sunny weather. Or do I eat it? No, it still needs a couple more days. Oh, so close. Got that to look forward to though. But yeah, we have lots of flowers in here, and I've been careful to keep this quite weeded, because I did have a bit of a bindweed problem in here. But hopefully most of that's now eradicated, apart from that bit there. Can you see it? I need to get that. Yes, lots of strawberries to come in June. So excited. Really hope I harvest them this year. I think it was a mouse that got them last year, and I have seen a mouse on the plot, so we're keeping a close eye on him. And this is the third patch, which I have recently netted. Now I'm just carefully climbing over the sweet corn here to show you my third strawberry patch. Now, I didn't actually have time this year to build a new strawberry cage like the other two that I have. So what I've had to do is resort to the plastic netting, which I really don't like to use. The reason I actually built the cages is because one year, going back about 3 or 4 years ago now, I used the netting, but a fledgling bird, a young bird, actually got caught up in it, and I was so heartbroken. It was still alive. I managed to take it to the Polytunnel and clip the netting away from its feet, but I felt so annoyed with myself and really heartbroken that that happened. And so from then on I decided I'm not going to use this stuff, and I'm going to use these cages. But looking at the amount of flowers in this patch this year, I had to get it protected and quickly. So I have used the netting again, but what I've done, you can see my silly little Christmas decoration there, because this netting is green, obviously blends in really well, which means sure it looks less of an eyesore to us, but it's more invisible to birds and mammals like hedgehogs and rodents as well. So I've just put this on the top to make it more visible. And the most important thing is that if you have any edges down here at the bottom, that they're covered, they're tucked in, there's nothing hanging out where anything can catch its foot. So this is quite secure, and you want to make sure it's really taut as well. You don't want any slack in the middle, at the sides, at the edges, or at the bottom, so that way it's safe for the mammals that might be tempted to go and try and get your strawberries. So yeah, hopefully this way they're protected and the birds and mammals are too. And in front of my third patch is where I've planted out some sweet corn and some little cosmos. And my fig tree, well, my fig tree is one of the things that did struggle a little bit with the frost. Even though I covered it with some fleece, I've lost some of the leaves. The frost got to it, the leaves blackened and crispened, and I've peeled them off in hope that these buds here will soon reshoot and I'll get some more leaves come a bit late. But as you can see, the fruits, the two big fruits here, they're really fattened up. Yeah, hopefully this will pick back up again soon. I have given it a good feed. And yeah, I love the base where I've planted it up with lots more of that arugula on. I really do love this style. And underneath my little alpine bird bath, I've actually got some pelargoniums, what some people call geraniums, but botanically they are correctly named pelargoniums. Oh, sorry for the intense zoom. I bought some scented ones, and this is, I think, Prince Orange. Let me give it a sniff. Yeah, oh, it's so citrusy. And these are some of the ones that I overwintered in my polytunnel, and some I gave to my neighbour to look after over winter, as he has a greenhouse. And I've also got some pineapple mint here in a pot that I had to move because it was before in a bit of a shady spot, and I realised it needs more sun. And this one smells, oh, it's so good. Can't wait for summer cocktails. The rhubarb, well, it doesn't look like I've been picking it, but believe me, I have. I've just been watering it every other day. It's taking so much water at the minute just to keep it hydrated, to keep all those leaves coming. Oh, look, we've got lots of little baby apples coming. So it won't be long before the apple drop. That happens in June, when my tree will decide to drop a load of these fruits because they cannot sustain all of them, and if there's any more than 2 on a bunch, then I'll take them off to make them nice and big when they do grow. I did have a little bit of a problem actually with apple mildew, which I haven't had before, but apparently it's caused by dry weather. So it's been very hot and dry for the last 2 months, and it just caught some of the leaves on a few of the branches, maybe 3 or 4 branches, and I just snipped off the damaged foliage and then took it home and put it in the bin. Didn't go in the compost bin. And hopefully, I've not seen any other signs of infection yet, but it is obviously a fungal that's airborne, fungal disease that's airborne, so I'm not surprised that I got it really, especially since my plot is actually next to an orchard as well, that way. But yeah, fingers crossed it's not going to affect the crop this year, and hopefully it won't come back next year, but time will tell on that one. And just look at the growth on my raspberries. I'm sure last month they were only about 6 inches tall, and now, well, they come up to my hip. And have we got any fruit buds yet? Flower buds? Not yet, still a bit early. And the good thing about the varieties that I have is that they're quite spineless. There aren't very many thorns on the side of these, and they're also pretty sturdy. They can stand up for themselves. They don't really need staking, so I don't really need to do anything special with these. They look after themselves. Just cut them back at the end of winter. Are you ready to come and have a look at my lupins in the wildlife corner? It's one of my favourite spots. Let's go have a look. Not only do lupins have amazing flowers, but this foliage is just so striking as well, and looks great in the rain. We've got so many flowers, more to come as well. And this little spot has given me so much joy over spring, watching all the birds visit the bird bath. Let's get a closer look. I'm lucky that my lupins do so well here. I think a lot of people have problems with pests eating them, but yeah, I'm really lucky they do well here. And this is my rose campion flower, which is really loved by the hoverflies. Bright pink flower that'll be, but that's grown significantly in the last few weeks. It's about 2 foot tall now. My geranium little boy blue has buds just about to burst. As you can see, the forget-me-not is still hanging on. It's just going to seed now. And it's done a really good job of sort of naturalising around here. And of course I've got a few what you call weeds at the back. Rose bay willow herb, that's great for butterflies and moths. Some few nettles there at the back. But yeah, lots of love with the bird bath lately. I'm topping it up almost every day. It's just been so hot. There's even a bee. And can you see we've even got more lupins there at the back. I can see at least 3 more flower spikes that haven't even come up yet. This is how it looks from above if you're walking back down my path. I've still got so much of the plot to see. Let's have a look at my new raised bed. This border behind me is a brand new border that I've made this year. I've filled it all up with lots of topsoil and compost, and I filled it with some cut flowers. But I'm not including things like my dahlias and my cosmos because they're going elsewhere. But this is more of a cut flower border with quite a few flowers that are good for drying, such as my straw flowers and some globe amaranth. But I've also got some foliage filler in here, such as the frosted explosion grass and some phlox as well. That's going to be really pretty. And yeah, it's just a bit of a new experiment for me this year. Lots of flowers that I've not grown before in a raised bed that I've not grown in before. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one grows. I've chosen quite a mixed planting scheme. Rather than planting it in blocks of each type of flower, I've chosen more of a meadow kind of mix match tapestry effect. So hopefully it's a lot more like a meadow and might have more interest that way, although I might find out that I might need to move a few of the shorter plants towards the front if it turns out that that's the case. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this one grows over the season. And next to the shed, well, my old tulip bed is going over now, just letting all the foliage die back naturally. It's in that awkward stage where it just looks an absolute mess. But I don't want to cut the foliage too early, otherwise it will affect the performance of next year's blooms. So what I will be doing, once it all goes yellow, I'll probably cut it back and then replant it with something for summer. My other new bed is also now planted out. Hopefully you've already watched my other video that I released about a week or so ago, where I'm planting it all out. It's quite a shady spot, so I've planted it out with lots of shade tolerant crops, and it's growing really well. And just the last week or so, the lettuce plants have really bulked out, and yeah, it's looking really lush. And here's the plot from the bottom end. Lots of structures in place now. My table is currently a picnic table because we had a barbecue earlier today. Let's have a look at my carrot bed, or at least first my Welsh onions. Look at them, all those flower heads. The bees have been absolutely all over this. Oh, there's one there now, look. I'm keeping my carrot bed netted at all times to prevent carrot fly. But look at all those carrots. This front row I've actually thinned out a little bit. The other 3 I haven't yet done, so that's the next job. But they're looking really good in there. And I only sowed those, I think, at the start of the month. And all of these nasturtiums below, they've all self-seeded from last year, which is great because it means I don't have to plant them. Just coming back to my bench for a moment, I recently visited my plot neighbour who was offering some plants out, and that's at the Heritage Display Garden. And he let me have a wander through the greenhouse, and I've picked up some runner beans, some big cosmos because mine are still quite small, and this canna is the first thing I grabbed. I couldn't believe it. That deep reddish maroon colour with a hint of green, it's just so rich and I just love it. So yeah, very kindly let me take a few plants, so thank you very much, John. Over here, my potatoes, they're doing really well despite a little bit of frost damage. I did cover them with fleece, but because the fleece was touching the foliage, I mean, you can't even tell anymore, but there were a few sort of black tops in places, but it's otherwise you wouldn't even know now. It's coming on great guns. And behind the potatoes we have my squash bed this year. Say hello to a squash mountain. This is where I'm going to be growing some of my squash this year. The red curry squash that I grew last year, really loved it, really recommend it. It's a nice small bright orange, quite early cropping variety, and I've got one on each side. I'm kind of pushing the limits with the planting distance, especially since I've also planted a cucumber, a dwarf cucumber on each corner. This is the Syria variety. So, but yeah, I just love this beast. It's making use of lots of dead wood, lots of hazel sticks and some branches. Really easy to construct. I'm just really hoping it doesn't come down in the middle of summer with a high gust of wind, but it's pretty sturdy. I think it's not going to go anywhere, right? Fingers crossed, eh? And next to my squash mountain, I have planted out some other squash. This one's called Buttercup. I'm also growing Sibley squash. I've got Thelma Sounders and also Sweet Pie that are growing in here. And they're all quite small at the moment. I planted them out quite young compared to previous years. But with all this warm weather, they'll soon start to grow and spread across this patch. As you can see, I've gone a little bit mad with the natural support structures this year. We've got one of these little teepees for my sweet peas on each corner of my beds, and then we've got 3 rows of peas, a really tall wigwam at the back for my adored Leicester peas, and yeah, I just love the natural trellis because it makes it look much more natural. But on this side we've got a sugar snap variety called Spring Blush, and behind me is another one called, I think it's called Rosa Corone. I can't quite read the label from here, and these are just poking up through the ground now. And then right at the back we've got the really big teepee for my Lord Leicester peas that are said to grow up to 6 feet tall. So I've got some really long sticks for that one, and yeah, they're just coming through the ground now as well, so I'm really excited to see them grow. I do have to keep them covered though, because the pigeons absolutely love the foliage of peas, and they've already had a little go at some of them. These ones are actually looking a little bit yellow. I think they've got a little bit stressed from all the hot weather. Peas actually like to have really cold roots but grow up towards the sun, so it's important to keep them really well watered during the hot spells. But hopefully if I keep them protected from the birds, I'll still get a crop. I've made a bit of a mistake with my garlic, guys. It's time to harvest this, but it's 2 months early, and the reason I've made a mistake is because I planted my saved cloves of garlic from last year's harvest, but I kind of forgot that last year's harvest had a teeny weeny little problem with rust, and that has now spread from the existing cloves that I planted, that's now grown and attacked the foliage. That is my main assumption of why it's so bad so early, although we did have a really wet winter, so it could also be that. But I haven't planted my leeks yet, and the rust from my garlic can easily transfer to my leeks. So it's time to harvest the lot, take everything home. I'm not going to compost any of the foliage, and then I'm going to plant my leeks on the other side of my plot. I was going to plant them behind the shallots in the space that's there, but it just means now I'm going to have an early crop of garlic. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I'm thinking of growing some swede or some turnips for winter and autumn. I've not actually grown those before, so it'd be interesting to try a new crop in this bed. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shame. How is your garlic doing? If you're growing garlic, have you got any signs of rust yet? I'd love to know. I almost missed my little courgettes. These are next to the potatoes. Quite small, but hopefully, you know, I'm watering them regularly, so they should hopefully put on a lot of growth very soon. I've also got a big tray of cosmos, which are going to be planted out in the next week or so with the calendula. This was last year's plant that didn't actually die back, so I've got lots of early blooms. My dahlia bed, well, the daffodils are going over. Again, I need to wait for them to yellow before I cut them back. And my dahlias need to go in because those are the ones that I lifted. But look how well the erigerons naturalised here. The forget-me-not's gone over there next to it, but it's great to have lots of frothy colour on an otherwise empty bed. Here they are, although that's not all of them, but they've been growing really well, and I've pinched them out. And that's a process where essentially all you're doing is cutting the main growing stem just above the first or second set of leaves, and this will encourage these little side shoots to grow, and then we'll end up having a much bushier, stronger plant with thinner stems that are better for cutting and arranging in your flower decorations. And you can see on this one how they're already shooting quite quickly, but they're all growing at different rates. Some are much smaller than others, even though I planted them all on the same day. Some dahlias just take their time, and it's still not too late to plant yours if you've just found some and you're panicking. It just means that they'll bloom a little bit later. Going into the polytunnel, and well, it's not quite as organised in here as I'd like at the moment. Still got lots of planting out to do, but down here we've got a few more dahlias. These are the new ones that I bought for the wildlife corner, so they're still quite small at the moment, which I'm keeping them in here rather than putting them outside. And then my canna, the new canna that I bought, has got its first leaf coming up, and look at that. I just love that variegation running through it. The white streaks are beautiful. Can't wait to plant this one out, especially alongside my new sort of maroon coloured one from my neighbour. That's going to look amazing. What else have we got going on here? Well, my carnivorous plant, my Sarracenia, is looking great. I've recently bought some new ones, but they're at home at the moment. Bought some sundews. Here are some of the caladiums that I bought. Only a few of the bulbs have sprouted so far. Oh, look at that one. It's got its first leaf come out. This is the green with pink running through the veins. That's amazing. Pop that back. I have some catmint cuttings rooting in water. These are some of my other pelargoniums. This one's the peppermint scented. Love rubbing the leaves of this one. And these are the catmint cuttings that I'm rooting in compost, so I'm doing a bit of both. And this here is my yet to be planted out pile. I've got a sweet pie squash, my purple basil, some more cosmos. I've got some parsley and lots more little flowers down there, as well as my leeks down there in that crate. They need to go out once I remove the garlic. And then welcome to my chilli forest. I've got far too many chilies in here. I don't even want to count them, because that's not all of them. I've even got some more that need to be potted up. But the tomatoes are actually looking pretty healthy, considering that they've been carted to and from my home to the polytunnel. Oh, look! We've got our first flower buds. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, because of the late frost, I had to move these around quite a bit. Some of them were yellowing, so I gave them a feed. But otherwise, they're looking pretty good. So my next big job is going to be planting out all of my tomatoes in the polytunnel and then moving out the dahlias. Lots of flower buds appearing. Oh, it's exciting. This is one that I'm most looking forward to, Galena, which is a potato leaf variety. Yeah, lots of tomatoes on the go. These are my other chili peppers that aren't as good as the others. And I've also got some really small tomato plants to give to some neighbours and friends, anybody that wants them. I'll be planting my tomatoes up using the stringing system that I've done for the last few years. I've got a separate video on that if you're interested in how I set up my polytunnel and plant my tomatoes. And so here is the plot towards the end of May 2020. I can't wait to get that fence covered at the back. It's a bit of an eyesore right now. Won't be for long. I can't wait to see my squash climb my squash mountain. Got lots of strawberries coming. It's been a good month. Everything's put on a lot of growth and I'm pretty happy with how the plot is shaping up. Well, as you can see, it's all starting to come together and hopefully we're going to have a really productive and beautiful summer with all of these crops that I'm busy planting out and growing. Over the next few weeks I'll be planting out my dahlias. They go out at the beginning of June once they're established and big enough to withstand some slugs and a bit of wind if it comes back again like it has. And over June I'll be harvesting my first crop of potatoes, my second early Charlottes and my first earlies, those Swifts, and hopefully I'll have lots of strawberries to harvest as well. I think I'll be doing a lot more watering as well. I think we're in for another hot summer. What do you reckon? My recommendation for you this month is another podcast because I love listening to my podcast whilst I'm at work, and this one I'm recommending to you this time is particularly new. It's been going since January by Lucy and Saul and it's called Talking Heads, and it comes from two head gardeners, Lucy and Saul, who work at two different estates, and it's really fascinating to hear about how they garden, how you can gear your career up to perhaps working as a head gardener. But even if that isn't your career path, it's still interesting to learn about how they garden, why they do what they do, their tips and tricks, and just sharing what's happening. And the differences between the two estates is also really interesting to hear. And they interview some fascinating people, and I just think you should go and give it a listen. They're also really lovely if you ever want to chat with them. Yeah, so I do definitely recommend download and listen to the Talking Heads podcast. Well, that's it from me. I'm ready to have a little lie down now after a busy month and a nice warm sunny day relaxing in the garden. So I will see you guys very soon. Take care, hope you're well. Please let me know how your garden's growing and how do you think our summer's going to pay out in the UK. I think it's definitely going to be a hot one. Let me know what you think. Take care and I'll see you soon.